In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Weimar Constitution. A constitution is a set of rules setting out how a country will be governed. So once the Kaiser abdicated, the Weimar Republic needed a set of rules to structure itself. In this video, there are 4 essential questions. The first, how was the new Weimar government organized? There will be a little diagram to help you, and this diagram should be included in your notes. Number 2, what is pure proportional representation, and how does it work? And number 3 and 4, what are the strengths as well as the weaknesses of the new Weimar Constitution? So, a little bit of review. Before 1918, Germany was a dictatorship ruled by Kaiser Wilhelm II. And when the Allies wanted to make peace, they sort of forced Germany to become a democracy because one condition of peace was that Germany was to become a democracy. On November 9, 1918, the Kaiser abdicated. On November 10, 1918, Germany became a republic led by Friedrich Ebert. And Friedrich Ebert actually said that he would guarantee freedom of speech, freedom of worship, and better working conditions for all Germans. As this new republic comes into being, Friedrich Ebert begins to make slow, very careful, and calculated changes in order to gain control of the country, because as we know, at this time Germany was very politically divided. Another obstacle to democracy was that German people and politicians had never experienced living in a democracy, so it was quite difficult because they didn't really know how to make it work properly. And finally, many of the wealthy upper classes didn't actually want democracy. They quite liked the way Germany was when the Kaiser ruled, so it was quite a tumultuous time for Germany. And from February 1919 to August 1919, meetings were held in Weimar to develop a new German constitution. Remember that the government was moved to Weimar because of political violence in Berlin. And basically, the constitution set out the structure of the German government, and this is how it worked. At the bottom of this diagram, we have the German people. The German people were able to elect representatives to local governments, to the Reichstag, which is the German parliament, and they directly elected the president every 7 years. Let's go into a little bit more detail here. There were about 18 local governments throughout Germany, like Bavaria, Prussia, etc. And the Reichstag was quite important because the Reichstag was in charge of taxation. It told Germans how much tax to pay, and it made laws for everyday people. Reichstag members were voted in every 4 years, while the president was elected by the people every 7 years. The president was quite an interesting person. He was not involved in the day-to-day running of the government. He had nothing to do with that. But he was very powerful because he was able to choose the chancellor, who is usually the leader of the largest party in the Reichstag. So, the president looked at all the people in the Reichstag and he chose the chancellor. And we'll go into detail about the chancellor in a moment. The president could also dismiss the Reichstag and call new elections, as well as assume control of the army and armed forces. If things were happening, for example, maybe a war, or if the Reichstag wasn't able to make decisions, the president was able to dismiss them. And finally, there was a special clause in the Constitution called Article 48. Article 48 basically allowed the president to suspend the Constitution and pass laws by decree, which means that the president could, in effect, once he had enacted Article 48, ignore the chancellor, the Reichstag, and the cabinet and make laws by himself. This kind of decision-making is especially important in emergency situations where you need quick decisions without a lot of debate, for example, in the event of a war or a natural disaster. So as I said, the president chose the chancellor. The chancellor was basically the head of government, and he chose a group of people from the Reichstag to help run the country. These people were called ministers, and the ministers sat on the chancellor's cabinet. So the cabinet would have a minister of health, minister of foreign affairs, minister of education, minister of transportation, etc. And their job was to help the chancellor come up with laws that might need to be passed. So they're kind of like specialists in their subjects, if you will. For example, the Minister of Health's specialist subject would be health, and they would know that subject very well in order to be able to propose laws related to health. However, the Chancellor and his cabinet couldn't pass a law unless they had the support of the majority of the Reichstag. So the Reichstag was quite important. This is an important diagram for you to note because it allows us to start pinpointing some of the strengths and weaknesses of the Weimar Constitution. So, who could vote for people? Germany was very forward-thinking in their voter laws because it had universal suffrage for all Germans over the age of 20. meaning that all Germans over the age of 20, men and women, could vote for their government, which was quite modern and forward-thinking for the time. One strength of the Weimar Constitution was that voter turnout was high due to universal suffrage. In fact, in 1919, 83% of the German registered voters voted, which is quite an impressive figure when you think that in the 2015 UK general election, only 66% of voters turned out. And how do people gain a seat in the Reichstag? Germany, in its quest for the perfect government, voted individuals into the Reichstag using a system called pure proportional representation. I don't think any countries in the world follow pure proportional representation, most likely because of the experiences of Germany. But here's what it sort of looks like. As a voter, your job is to go to your polling station, and on your voting ballot, you place a mark beside the party that you like and agree with the most. This is different from other electoral systems in which you vote for the person in your area that you like the most. So again, you vote for the political party that you agree with most. These votes then get tallied, added up. Elections officials would tally the number of votes for each political party, as well as the total number of votes for the election. So, for example, here are the results from the 1919 election in Germany. As you can see, 11,509,048 votes for the SPD party. They were the party with the most number of votes. The total number of votes for the 1919 election was 30,524,848. After the tallies are complete, elections officials calculate what percentage each political party has of the total number of votes. Going back to our example, out of all those votes in the 1919 election, the SPD party had about 38% of the vote, and the German Peace Party had 0.01% of the vote. After you calculate percentages, you allocate seats in government based upon that percentage. So there were 421 seats in the Reichstag, and the SPD party would get 38% of those seats, which ends up being 163. And you do that for all of the parties. And each political party has a ranked list of all of their members, and they would then select which members, based upon their rank, to put into the Reichstag. So the SPD would select numbers 1 through 163. As you can see, when you use pure proportional representation system, there are a large number of small parties that only have 1 or 2 seats in government. So, in a way, this is a strength because it gives many different people a political voice, and is therefore more democratic. But, at the same time, this electoral system is a weakness because a political party in Weimar Germany would need to hold 211 seats in order to have a majority government. This makes it difficult to pass laws through government because no party is in the majority, and they would always need to have a majority to have a law passed through. So it is ineffective, and there could be a lot of discussion with very little work done. For example, in 1919, did the SPD have 211 seats in the Reichstag? No. So was it hard for them to pass laws through government? Yes. To deal with this issue, political parties in Weimar Germany were always having to compromise and to make agreements with other political parties. In politics, we call this forming a coalition government with another party or parties. This allows political parties to gain enough seats in government to have a majority, which means there are no really strong governments using this pure proportional system. In summary, this electoral system is positive because everyone's voice is heard, but it's negative because you need to have coalition governments, which makes the government weak and not able to pass laws easily. Overall, that's the Weimar Constitution. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.